The sun has left and forgotten me.
Your stories don't define you, but how you tell them will. Hi, I'm Sarah Elkins, your host and Chief Storymaker at Elkins Consulting. Whether you're sharing business stories or personal stories, the stories you share and how you share them matters. Because those same stories not only change the perception people have of you, they color how people experience you, but they also change and modify and can bring incredible insight to your internal dialogue and those internal messages, both positive and negative. And my guest today, Erin Diehl, is a perfect example of how that shows up in the best possible ways. So before I introduce her, listeners, I want to remind you that the job interview storytelling course that I put out on Udemy is out there and available for you. So if you are getting ready for an interview and you want the extra step that makes you more memorable and helps you collect exactly the stories you need to demonstrate your skills, take the course. You can find more information at elkinsconsulting.com. Erin, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so glad you're here.
Sarah, I am so glad too. I'm feeling the vibes. We did a little namaste moment before we started. So namaste in this podcast recording, and I'm just excited to be here, serve your audience, serve the amazing people that you get to talk to every week. So let's do it.
Excellent. Well, let's back up a little bit because some of our listeners may not know what you mean by namaste. I know because I took yoga classes for years and that's how we ended them. But if you could describe for listeners what this means to you, I think they'd appreciate hearing it.
Okay, that's a beautiful question. And I couldn't tell you the Wikipedia definition or the Webster definition, but to me, it's honoring myself. It's honoring others. It is a reminder to serve myself first so that I can serve the world.
The peace in me and matches the peace in you, and we bring peace to our community.
That's right.
Yes, yes. And I just put something together that I had never put together before. The definition of namaste actually is very similar to why Jewish people sing a prayer called the Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehechianu v'kiyamanu v'higianu lazman hazeh, which is the shehechianu, which is the prayer that we say at the first night of any holiday, not on the Sabbath, because that happens every week, but like the first night of Hanukkah, we sing that song before and as we light the candles for the first night of Hanukkah. When I was growing up in a pretty religious household, I don't have a religious household, but I have a very ritualistic household that I use those traditions to bring gratitude to our home. But I remember growing up that the first time we'd have a fresh pomegranate for the year, like we'd get it in the fall and we hadn't had one in a year, we would sing the Shehechianu. And the meaning behind it is thank you, gratitude for bringing us to this place in this time, in this moment with these people. And that's kind of what namaste
Sarah.
is, right?
Yes. And it makes, for me, I've been on a journey for many years of feeling peace and allowing gratitude and my divine feminine to lead. And I'm a human. I get in and out of alignment. But when I'm in alignment, everything flows and life is just more meaningful and easier. And I feel like I'm serving not only the people in my life, but I'm serving the greater collective. And it all starts with honoring and giving space and gratitude for myself and the things in my life and the people and the present moment. And I love that you brought all that together because rituals and prayer and mantras and affirmations and words mean a lot, but we have to really believe them. and
Mhm.
internalize them in order to make a difference in our own life. And then we can therefore change others once we have shaped ourselves.
Right. Exactly. And we have to come up with the mantras that are going to work for us, that make
Yes.
sense to us, that we can believe in and trust. And the reason I say that is that people have heard this story before, but years back, a couple of my friends wanted to do a word of the year, and I picked the word focus, which anyone who's been listening to this podcast or anyone who's known me for even 10 minutes knows that focus is not my thing. But a little hyperactive, a little ADHD, but I picked the word focus, and within a couple of weeks, I was beating myself up over not being able to be that person that could focus. And my internal dialogue was just beating the crap out of myself. And it was later on, I finally took StrengthsFinder and became a certified coach in it. And then I looked at the word, and there are 34 talents in this list, and focus, which is the people who their best brain work comes when they have uninterrupted minutes at a time, 20 minutes, half an hour longer, where they are in flow. And they have to do that every day to bring their best brain to their work. It's number 29 on my list. It's really low. That is never going to be a way that I approach problem solving. It feels like ripping my soul out of my body. So when I say your word has to align with who you are and your natural talents, that's what I mean. My word couldn't be a word that is going to make me feel bad about myself. So my word of the year this year and last year has been practice.
Yes.
That feels right to me.
Sounds nice. I like that. I have a word of the year too. We do it every year with my team. And so I told you I sit in my little podcast recording closet, and right behind my computer, I have a vision board. And so my word is on the vision board, and it's play, which is, ingrained in what I do. So I better be playing because I use improv comedy to train people. But it's like, what is that saying? The shoemaker who doesn't have good shoes.
The cobbler's children have no shoes.
Yes.
Right.
I literally, I was the improviser who wasn't improvising or having a lot of fun because I was so head down in my business. And so, I've really tried to embrace that word, and I've had a lot more fun this year. It's been amazing.
I love it. I love it. That's perfect. But let's back up a little bit, because our listeners are probably wondering, because I haven't asked you the very first question yet, which is I would love for you to share something about yourself that most people don't know about you. And part of the reason I want to do this now is because when we were having our moment right before I hit record, we started talking about something that I think is going to be really insightful and inspiring to the people who hear our conversation. And I want to start with that question. So tell our listeners something about you that most people might not know.
Yeah. And I think this is what I hit on. I want to make sure you tell me if I'm going the wrong direction. I will say, for me, growing up, I grew up in a home that was very supportive. In improv comedy, we use a philosophy for everything we do on stage. It's what I teach in corporate America to teams and leaders. It's called yes and. And it's a very simple concept. It's yes, I hear you, and I'm going to add something versus negate what you said. So it's a postponement of judgment, but it allows people to feel seen, heard, and valued. And I think one thing that people really don't know about me is that I was taught yes and from a really young age without really even realizing it. Everyone has childhood trauma, and our parents in some way, shape, or form are going to mess us up. I'm going to mess up my son in some way. I mean that with love. But my parents truly did the very best that they could. And I will say one of the things that is fundamentally one of the things that I'm fundamentally grateful for them is the ability to not knock me down for any idea that I had. I said at a young age I wanted to be a talk show host. Many people do know that. But I said, this is just an example. I said, I'm going to be a talk show host. When I was 11 years old, I made that statement. I wanted to become Oprah Winfrey. My parents were like, of course, yes, do that. Because if anybody can do that, like literally it's you, because you're going to annoy the crap out of them until it happens anyway. Right. So like they gave me some tough love, but they really were the most supportive parents. So I think a thing that if we just met, or if, obviously I'm talking to your audience for the very first time, to know is that I did grow up being yes-anded, and I have taken that fundamental into my life, and it's now my life's work.
I love that. The reason we got into this conversation is that I was saying that a lot of women did not grow up in households like that.
Mm-hmm.
And Erin and I were sharing that we both grew up in households where our parents, mom and dad, were very supportive. My dad never said that I couldn't do anything. Obviously, there were boundaries. Like he wouldn't let me go dating until I was 15 or 16 years old, that kind of thing. But as far as my goals, my ideas, my values, they were encouraging through those. Even when they wanted to discourage because they were afraid I'd get hurt, they still would find a way to help me grow.
Yeah.
And I had talked to a woman a couple of years ago, Diehl Parak. I'll have to remember that and put a link in the show notes on this podcast to that episode, where she said that she was at a conference, a women's conference, and she found herself getting annoyed and a little judgy at the women who were talking about the controlling aspects of the men in their lives, their fathers, their brothers, their husbands. And she found herself getting a little judgy, like, why would you listen to them? Or why would you accept that behavior? And then she had this realization and was overwhelmed by compassion and curiosity for these women, realizing that she couldn't help coach them. She couldn't be the coach they needed unless she understood where they were coming from and not judging them, but coming from a place of curiosity. And the big aha moment for her was they weren't raised the way she was raised. And you and I started talking about that, and the fact that we all have something that we've been through, hard struggle, and it's all relative. And yet there's that aspect of, if we don't approach with curiosity, then our struggle seems very small compared to other people sometimes, or our struggle seems way bigger than somebody else's if we're busy comparing.
Yes. Okay. I want to dive into what you said, and I want to add something. So a little yes and, if you will,
Perfect.
even there. So I'm currently reading a book by Dr. Nicole LaPera called How to Do the Work. Have you ever read that book?
No, I haven't read that one.
It is so, okay. Just to kind of take a couple of steps back here. I think a lot of the times when we go through struggles in life, it's coming from a place of a wounded inner child, right? There's something within us that we still need to heal. There's something within us that might have happened in our childhood. There's something that has programmed itself in our DNA that has triggered us to take us down this emotional path that we're on. And so I was down an emotional path recently, and I'm a very spiritual person. I'm a meditator. I'm aligned that way in terms of spirituality, not religious, but spiritual. And I meditated, and I received the download to pick up this book, and I've been reading it. And what I found, it is so profound to me about not only the way that we have been perceived, or the patterns that we've picked up in our childhood have, progressed into our lives, but it's almost like when you see somebody leading with ego, or not leading from their heart, there's something underneath that has caused them harm. And so as I dug into the book and dug into the work, I realized where my perpetual people pleasing comes from. I realized where my need for overachievement comes from. And I was even able to help my mom through some of her own struggles that she hasn't dealt with from her childhood. So all of that to say, women collectively, I think we're emotional beings. And I love that you touched on this. For me, it all comes back to looking at myself from a higher view, looking on like as a spectator, not in myself, and witnessing some of the things that have gone on in my life to contribute to some of the emotions that I'm feeling today. And I will say, being raised in a family where you think, there's not really any trauma at this time, but there are things that happened in my childhood that have caused me pain today. And it's recognizing the pattern, fixing the pattern, and doing the work internally to heal yourself that helps us gain clarity and move on and become the highest version of ourselves. And so I know this is like taking what you said and adding a lot to it, but
it's really beautiful. I love it.
Thank you. But I feel appreciative that my parents, the one thing that I feel like was just so consistent was their consistency in believing in me. So my self-doubt and limiting beliefs never came from them.
Oh, I was just going to add that or ask that.
Yeah.
Because I know that there have been times when I've mentioned things to my mom about my childhood that she immediately gets defensive, like I'm somehow telling her she was at fault or I'm blaming her for something. And I've had to remind her multiple times, this isn't about you.
Yes.
This isn't, and I know you did the best you could do. I'm not criticizing you. I'm saying that this happened and this is how I perceived it. And at 4 years old or 10 years old or even 16 years old, all that matters is the perception. It's not the intention that the parent has. It's the perception the kid has. And there's nothing you can do about it as a parent until they tell you that was their perception. And that may not happen until they're parents themselves. So I love that you said that. I love that you added that. And for all of us as moms, I think it's important to recognize that we are going to have those moments with our children. And we also have to be open to it, like we expect our mothers to be open to it and our fathers. I just had a conversation about that with my younger son, who's 23. Back in February, he was visiting. He was living in Colorado at the time, and he was visiting me here in Montana, and his dad and friends and his brother. And before he left the house, as he was flying back to Colorado, I said, Max, thank you so much for making us look good. And he looked at me a little puzzled. And I said, I know I messed up. Like in my head, I think about all the times that I messed up with you. That's what pops into my head when I think about your childhood is, could have done that better. And, I can't believe I did that. And, the things I know I did wrong. And I said, none of that matters when I look at you and the way you move through the world. You make us look like we were the best parents in the world, totally faultless. And I just really appreciate that.
Yeah. And it's so true. I mean, I don't think I know that we move through the world feeling safety if we were brought up in a safe space growing up. And not a lot of people can say that they have been brought up in a safe space. And it makes such a difference in every facet of our life. It's the spaces we were brought up in. We have the ability to change, but that internal safety from like a young perception, it affects how you lead teams. It affects how you lead the next generation and your family. This is just, okay, I'm going to share a story. And this is where the storytelling comes in, because this is huge. And I hope my mom doesn't get mad that I'm going to share this, but I'm going to share it because this happened recently. So I live in Charleston, South Carolina. And recently we always have a hurricane every year, but Hurricane Debbie just came to town this week. And I had just gotten back from a vacation, which was like way overdue with my husband and my son. We got back on Saturday. We got home. Our dog had fleas. Okay. And yeah. And then the hurricane was coming on Monday. So we had to like get the house ready, hurricane proof the house. And my husband has to go to Chicago every 3 weeks for work. So he was going to have to leave on Monday for work. So I'm freaking out. Like I'm doing all the things, right? And my parents just moved here. So I called my mom and I said, hey, can you come over if John has to go to Chicago this week and just stay with me this week? Because I don't like to be alone. And it was basically like tornadoes, right?
Right.
And she goes, and I'm just going to, I'll sugarcoat this. She basically was like, well, and this is how my mom talks, so I'm just going to do her impression. She's like, well, why can't you come here? And I was like, Mom, I have a toddler and a dog with fleas, and you don't want me in your house, and it's just much easier. I work from home. Can you just come here? Well, my mother never bent over backwards for me. And I'll tell you, in that moment, Sarah, I lost my poop. Okay. And I said, Mom, stop projecting your unhealed. What did I say exactly? I was like, Mom, stop projecting your unhealed wounds from your mother onto me. This is not my problem. Because I knew what she was thinking. She was thinking,
right,
my mom would never have dropped everything for me. She had 4 kids. She was a single parent. She was trying to put food on the table. My parents are amazing. They help out with my son all the time. But I think it just like built up over time of me asking for things. And I go, Mom, this isn't about you. And I said, this is about me. I'm scared. I'm afraid to be here alone by myself in a hurricane. So I said, please stop acting like that. And I cannot tell you how transformative that conversation has been, because she makes little quips and things here, and she never really gets to the root of the problem. And she came over the next day, as they did. She gave me a hug, and I said, Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to, be angry, but I just needed you to hear me in that moment. I didn't feel safe. I didn't need, this response. And she goes, well, it really hit home for me when you said that I have unresolved trauma from my mother. And she goes, you're right, I do.
Oh my gosh.
It was such a pivotal moment for myself as a parent, because I was asking to feel safe. My mom was not feeling safe in her own space because she was being tormented by something that happened in her past. So it really was this full circle moment of breaking a generational pattern and having a conversation that was courageous, that also was like, I'm putting up a boundary. Like, I'm not going to feel bad for asking you to come help me in this time of crisis. Like, it's not like a thunderstorm. Like, this is a hurricane. And
your grandson is with me.
Yes.
Hello.
Exactly. So it created this like really great bridge for us to have really deep, meaningful conversations. And I do think it's because I'm doing my own internal work, and I've been doing it for the past few years, that, led her to that eye-opening experience about her own things she needs to work through. And I think, I'm grateful for my generation, because we're a generation of healing. We're a generation that talks openly about mental health. We're a generation that believes in therapy and believes in bettering ourselves. And I know my mom was doing the best with what she had while raising us. I just think that it was a faux pas to dive into your childhood and dive into your healing at that time. And so I think my mom is she's 71. And I think she's now starting to look inward, and it's really cool.
Isn't that beautiful? I know.
Yeah.
I'm having similar conversations with my mom. I have been for a few years now. And it's funny because she was a nurse for many years, and she went back to school at almost 40 to become a nurse, took her 4-year RN program with 3 teenagers at home, and graduated summa cum laude. I have incredible admiration and respect for my mom. And it was only in recent years that she was saying something communication wise. And I said, well, as a communication professional, here's something to think about. And she dismissed me.
Yeah.
And at some point I said, hey, Mom, if I was a dermatologist and I told you to get something looked at,
There
you
you
would
go.
get it looked at, right?
There you go. Yes.
I'm a professional at this. I get paid to have these conversations with people. So maybe next time I'd really appreciate it if you wouldn't just dismiss it because it came from me.
That's right. That's right. Good for you, Sarah. Good for you.
It was pretty funny. And then we laughed about it. She's like,
Yes.
oh, yeah, I would go if you were a dermatologist.
Right. Right. And I think that's, that our work spills over into life as I
hope
teach
so.
soft skills, right? Exactly. And I teach improv, and this is what I've been doing I've been an improviser for 18 plus years. I've had this business for 10 years, and
Wow.
I really see how this work has affected me just full circle, and I'm so grateful for it. I also see how I have transformed in the past 10 years from the person I was. I mean, decade of work, but also a decade of life. And I look back at past versions of me who didn't have some of the knowledge that I have, and I just give her grace because I'm like, she was just figuring it out, right? And I'm still figuring it out. Like, I don't have it together. I don't have anything together.
I thought you were going to say it's cringy, because that's what I was thinking. Like, I look back at past versions of myself, it's a little cringy. I'm
Yes.
like, oh.
And there's like, I have girlfriends I've had in my 20s and 30s, and I had a girlfriend recently send some videos of like fun things we were doing in our 20s, and I was just like, I don't even know that girl anymore. But I see her, and I give her grace and love and compassion. But I will say, even then, I played, like, my word play has been a part of my life for forever, and I had a really great time. I just think I was
no
not
regrets.
as aware. Yes, exactly.
Right. I have to tell you, just a little while ago, I saw a young woman in her 20s behaving badly, and I looked at her and I said, coming from me behaving that way in the past, I am telling you, if you don't change this now, you're going to look back and you're going to cringe at this.
Yes.
So I just am hoping that you'll be a little more intentional, a little more aware. And I walked away. It was a total stranger.
Oh, good for you, Sarah. Okay. Good for you. Good for you.
This is going to be cringy when you look back at it.
Yeah.
Trust me, I know.
We all got them. I got a whole book, but I do think for me, it's like more awareness, than anything, more internal awareness, more remembering who I am here to be and why I'm here versus then was, I'm here, let's have fun, and
it's also about choosing, saying, this is how I want to show up in the world.
That's right.
Yes. And my behavior has to be in alignment with that. That's the first thing you said, is that, your body, your brain, your heart, you can be, if you're out of alignment periodically, that's totally normal. You're human. You have to come back to it. How do I want to be in the world?
Yeah. In alignment with my assignment, right?
Yeah. So let's get into your work a little bit. And as our listeners know, I always like to start with hearing what you do without you telling me what you do. So instead of saying, I'm a coach of, or whatever you do, tell us a story about a work with a client or clients that had you realizing how good you are at your job.
Okay. I got a good one.
Okay.
So I'm like, I got a good one. How do I not tell you? But I'm gonna try. So in 2017, I was about 3 years into the business, and I had an amazing intern named Jenna. And my team collectively was asked to be trainers for the first ever training day for the Obama Foundation in Chicago.
Wow.
And it was so cool. Myself and my director of talent, we trained 25 of the trainers at the Obama Foundation to then train a collective group of 250 participants or citizens who were there to affect positive change in the city of Chicago. Jenna was able to be a citizen because the age requirement was 18 to 24. She was 23. And we asked the client, can she be a participant? So Jenna is a part of the day. They're put in small groups, and the accumulation of the day adds up to each small group presenting a project to the collective group that will affect positive change for the city. So Jenna pitched her idea to the group. Her group chose her pitch, and then Jenna had to pitch to the group of 250 participants. Well, here's the catch. Jenna was afraid of her own shadow. Jenna was the most shy intern we'd ever had, but she was the most passionate intern, but she was terrified of even picking up the phone in the office. Back then we had a landline. Okay. And, I've got a landline. Just got to make sure people remember what that is. So Jenna gets up to speak, and I'm like I'm like Amy Poehler in Mean Girls with my camera, like recording her the whole time, just sending her so much energy and confidence. And the person that she realizes she is now pitching to isn't just this group of 250 people. It is former President Barack Obama. So in front of 250 participants, a group of media professionals, Jenna is presenting her idea to a former president. And I know it's 10 minutes in length because I have it in video. Jenna crushed it. She used all the skills that we teach in our offerings to have this amazing back and forth give and take conversation with a world leader. And they were laughing and joking. And then collectively, the audience loved the conversation, loved the pitch. She came over to me, gave me the biggest hug. It was the most fulfilling day of my career to literally watch the skills that we teach be transformative for her in real life with such a really huge leader. She hugged me, and as soon as she hugged me, she was whisked away by ABC News. Then ABC left her, and then CNN came over, and she was literally the face of the Obama Foundation website for months, okay? Because I kid you not.
Wow.
What I train on is we help people become the highest versions of themselves through play, through improv comedy. We allow them to feel, experience, and be confident and find that fun inside of them to be better leaders, to be better communicators, to trust themselves, to think more quickly on their feet. And in that moment, I witnessed a transformation take place. Jenna went from an intern at Improve It, which is the name of my company, to now the VP of Client Experience. So if you call in to Improve It, you're going to talk to her, and she's going to book your workshop, and she's going to take you through the entire experience or keynote, whatever it might be. And she is the case study of what we do. That's
wow. I got to chill. No, that's it. That's it.
Yeah.
It's like my friend that just said, I'm just a receptionist. I'm like, what? You mean just?
You're a manager of energy. That's what you are.
Seriously, she is the face of the organization. She's the first person people see when they walk into that medical clinic.
That's right.
Yeah, that's important, not just. Wow. That was such a perfect explanation. Thank you. I have to say, sometimes, many times, my podcast guests don't share a story like that. It's like I have to pull detail after detail until the story becomes clear. And that was so perfectly shared. So thank you.
Well, I hope it is, because I have to tell stories for a living too, you know? Like I know. But that so I did recently, in February of 2024, I launched a book, and that story is in the book. It's chapter 8. It's called From Interning to an Interview with Barack Obama. And it is like literally, like, you could take away everything and just give me that story, and I tell her every day, she is the case study of Improve It. She literally is the walking example. She's never done improv a day in her life, by the way. She just has this calling for the work that we do. And she's such a great communicator. She's an amazing listener. That's what makes her great. She's an amazing listener, and she deeply cares for making the world a better place. And just witnessing that has been the highlight of my career, and watching her grow professionally. I mean, I really couldn't even, you can't make that story up. And it was, and I got to meet him too. We all got to meet him and get pictures, and it was
amazing. So
incredible. It was such an incredible moment. And she still hasn't gone back and watched the video. Like, it's so funny. She won't do it.
She's worried it'll be cringy.
Yes. And I'm like, you crushed it. And then, so from there, cut to, that was 2017. We launched the book this year. this is another full circle moment for me. So Jenna has been with me through everything. We went through the pandemic together. We went through like the loss of an employee. We went through a key employee. Like we went through many life's journey. I was a new mom. She helped me get through that. Like I've been with her through many of her life's adventures, and she's been with me through mine. And she has become this amazing professional woman. And we did a book lunch party in Chicago, and her mom and sister came, and they had never seen that side of Jenna. Jenna was sitting right next to me while I was signing books. Like people were buying books from her, and they were like, wow, she was just so confident and like put together. And just, I go, yeah, this is like her every day. And then her mom came. Her mom's name is Jane. I'll never forget this. She had like one of those yellow sheets of paper, like from the yellow notebooks, you know, lined paper.
Oh, yeah.
And on the paper was a list of 13 names of all of her girlfriends that she was buying the book for, because she knew that Jenna was such an integral part of the book. So I sat there and signed 13 copies for all 13 of her friends. Shane's walking out with like these handful of books, but it was just so wonderful to witness the like beauty of her family recognizing her professional life and how much she's grown. And I have that list. I kept that list. I'll never get rid of it. It's like my favorite
two
thing
things.
Ever. Yeah.
Two things that are popping in my head right now. One is you've seen this transformation. You've experienced it. You have this clear, compelling evidence of your contribution, of the reason, your why, right? You have this evidence that anytime you start to doubt yourself, you look over at Jenna, or you look at that list, or you look at the video, whatever, you have all the evidence you need, right? But what came to my head was, that's just one woman. And I think about the ripple effect of your work, not just with Jenna, but all of the people that she impacts. And not just that, but this is the one you know. This is a story you know. And I guarantee there are hundreds of stories of people like Jenna that you don't know, that you haven't heard, that they haven't reached out and said, hey, Erin, I need you to know that how your work has transformed me. That was the first thing that popped into my head. And it's guaranteed. Like I have so much confidence. My intuition is on fire right now that this is true. There's no doubt in my mind. The other thing that came up,
I'm like crying. So I have fake eyelashes on. I'm like, I can't cry right now, Sarah. They're about to fall off. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
The other thing that popped for me is that we often don't see the transformation of the people closest with us. We see them for how we experience them in their youth, which may still not be who they are necessarily, but how we experience them, our perceptions of them. And I think about that because last summer, my brother and sister saw me perform in our rock band for the first time. And this rock band has been performing for 14 years. And this was the first time they came to see one of our performances. And it was a huge outdoor venue with food trucks everywhere, and big beer garden, and over 1,000 people at the park to see this performance. And what I remember most is my brother's reaction. It wasn't, oh my gosh, she's such a talented musician. That was not even part of the conversation. It was, did you see how she got the audience engaged? Did you see how she how she lit up the stage? Like he was talking about what he was observing in the relationship of energy between me, my bandmates, and the audience.
So cool. How cool is that to feel? Like the people who know you the most sometimes don't see all parts of you. And
of course not.
I love
and
that.
Sometimes
experience it.
Thank you. And sometimes I think we come back to this story that we started at the very beginning, where you and I were raised in households where we were supported, where we felt safe exploring, right? I always felt safe to say, I want to try rock climbing, or I want to play the violin, or I want to whatever. And my parents would do whatever they needed to do to help me explore that. And yet there's still that disconnect sometimes between who we are and who we choose to be as we age, who we find ourselves to be as we age, and how important it is that we continue to see those incremental changes and support those, because it's really easy, like the mother of your colleague saying, oh my gosh, look at how confident she is, right? A little surprised.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so important to, one of the things I think that honestly, like, not to go backwards in time, but the pandemic did for me is it actually allowed me to look back at life and reflect. So I think one of the silver linings from that for me was to not always try to go forward 5 steps, to take a moment and just look at how far you've come. Because 5 years ago, you wanted what you have now. And what you want right now is more, right? But taking a look at the beautiful life that you've created for yourself, the band that you've had for 14 years, this podcast that you have, this company that you've created, and saying, wow, look what I did, instead of being like, oh, I still want this, and just celebrating and sitting in that. And because the accolades, what I'm really working on right now in my space is not needing the outside validation. That's my own childhood wound. And I am really working on being happy as me, like not needing the praise, but being happy with internal peace and calm and happiness, and filling my cup so I can give to the community that I serve, and to my family, and to the world, and help make it a better place. But like, I can't do that for the recognition of it. I have to do that because this is what I'm here to do. And
because it fits.
Yeah. And because this is my calling, and not because it gives me an award or a like on Instagram, and those are things that I'm continuously working for myself.
I think that's the hardest thing for most of us who strive.
Yeah.
Most of us who want to contribute, who choose a positive relevance in the lives of the people around us. I think that's one of the hardest things, is to hold on to what we see as our successes and not be looking for external gratification or validation. And I say that because I know how important that is. I also say that because I see this as a product of age in my life, and in most of the women that I've worked with over the past 15 years, is that there was a point where, I'll just tell a little story. I was in southern France with my husband. We were performing with a jazz group a couple times in southern France. It was amazing. There was one point on the road where my husband was grumpy, and he'd snapped at me. And I turned and I looked at him and I said, there are some things you don't have to say out loud. That hurt my feelings, and I don't deserve that. Now, we've been married as of May, 27 years.
Wow.
This was in 2018. So even then it had been over 20. And I remember this moment of choosing me. We're in the car. It's just the two of us. We're driving from, I don't know, Nîmes to Montpellier or something like that. This beautiful, the hill, the rolling hills and the vineyards and the sunflower fields. And I remember this moment of looking outside and thinking, he does not deserve the pleasure of my company right now, but I do.
Yes. Yeah.
And I like me.
Yes.
I like the way that I think about things sometimes. And so I just lost my frustration, my hurt, my anger, and just enjoyed this moment of me time.
Yes.
Looking out the window and thinking, I am in southern France.
Yes.
For goodness sake, I'm riding through Provence right now. I am not going to let something he said distract me from my appreciation of who I am in this moment and what I get to see, what I get to
That's right.
experience.
Good for you.
But I think it's age, Erin. I really
Me
do,
too.
because I don't know a lot of people that are so comfortable in their skin at younger ages that they get that.
I got an old soul on my team, Nicole.
Mhm.
She's 26 or 7. And that girl's wisdom, I should say that woman, not girl, that woman's wisdom is far beyond her years. She is literally the definition of an old soul to me. I'm like, wow, where does this come from? And she's a very soulful person as well. She's very, she's a wanderer. She cares deeply about the world. She's very spiritual, but she does see outside of herself. And I feel like it takes conscious work, right? And I want to just share this because you made me think of something. Not only is my favorite wine a rosé from Provence, but on your trip to Provence, this is sort of a full circle moment of where I'm at currently in my life. So I wrote the book called I See You. It's called I See You, A Leader's Guide to Energizing Your Team Through Radical Empathy. I wrote it out of a self-healing journey. Literally, like it flowed out of me. It was literally, I'm not even kidding you. It was like a download from spirit and just from ancestors that I know who took their own life. And I'm just going to share that here because that did with that what you want. But it was like this journey back to self-love. And you have to get there in order to be a selfless leader and then help the collective world around you, right? To attract people to your life. And so I wrote that book in alignment, got out of alignment, got back in alignment to launch the book, went through the beginning of this year feeling really aligned and just good. And then went through a period of like high self-doubt and needing affirmation. And like, it's like after, how they say after a wedding, like, it's just like a letdown. Like there's just like that after wedding blues. Like it was kind of like the post-book blues. And I was like seeking affirmation from like social media was a huge thing for me, seeking affirmation and approval and wanting to be seen in a way that was not good for me. And what I realized is that the reason, not only did I write the book for the greater collective of the human race to help people, but I wrote that book as a reminder of who I am and as a reminder to always see myself. It was the book I needed to write for my life to remind me that I need to see me first. And I got that download recently, and it was like this aha moment, a full circle moment, because that book just like flowed out of my body. It wasn't an arduous thing to write. It was like this moment of like, I have to write it right now. And I've gone back and just opened pages to it some mornings, just be like, well, what do I need to receive today? Mm-hmm. And it is wild because it's like, you don't need, I'm seeking affirmation from all these different channels when really I just needed to look inward.
Your own words. Yeah. Well, remember I said something about that we come in and out of alignment, and that it's that idea that we can be comfortable in our own skin, and that we have to take that time to decide how we want to be in the world.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And the fact is, we see those words and we forget that we have all this evidence. Right. That's something that you said before. And we talked about how you have this, you have Jenna's story as the evidence to look back on, to know that you're in the right place, you're doing the right thing for you and for the people around you. You needed to look back at your own evidence. And I think we do that a lot. I think just as human beings, we're constantly on this edge of self-destruction and self-doubt.
Yeah.
And nobody I know doesn't go through that.
Right. Right. I know. It's funny. It's funny how the world works. And I went on vacation recently. I told you that. It's part of the story coming back in my mom's story. And
Mhm.
I said to my husband, I go, I just want to disassociate. Like he goes, it's called unplugging, Erin. And I was like, no, I just want to like disassociate from my life. I want to pretend like nothing exists. And he's like, because you're burned out. And that's why you need this time to genuinely unplug. So I went away for a week with my family and I did not check email except my personal email. I did not check any social media avenue. I only gave to myself and to my family. And I almost didn't want to go back on social media this week because I just got back. It was almost one of those things like I'm healing from this. Like this is a torturous device for me. And I decided to reframe it and look at it as an opportunity to serve the world in whatever capacity I can. And not allow it to take over my mental space and not allow, I got very specific on what my yeses are going to be too. And that has been really helpful. But not only does my team have a word of the year, we also always have a word of the month. And sometimes it can be like a phrase. And my words for this month are priorities and presence. And I now know exactly what my priorities are. And I'm going to just list them for you in order. It's me first. Then my son. Yep. Because I have one son. And then my husband underneath. Sorry, but my kid goes first. Love him. They're both one and the same kind of, but he gets, got to meet his needs. And then it's my family, my community, my good friends, like my inner circle and my team. And then underneath that, it's everybody else. And I'm like, and if I've given to those people and I don't have room for everything else, and then that's okay. But I stand in those priorities and I'm present for them. And I've been doing that. We're recording on August 7th. I've been doing it for 7 days and I've noticed a big difference. And it's been transformative in how I feel about myself. Really. I mean, I'm not saying I'm healed here, Sarah, but I'm just saying it's just it's all internal thoughts and mindfulness and mindset. And that is really what I think gets me through.
Absolutely. Oh, that's perfect. That brings us full circle to being comfortable in our skin and raising children who are comfortable in their skin, giving them that support and foundation of safety and love. That's perfect.
That's
and
right.
Yes, I get it. Kid is top priority, especially when they're little. And I am relieved and filled with gratitude that our boys are grown and out of the house and doing their own things, and that my spouse and I have continued to make each other a priority,
Yes,
even through all of their growing up. So, and I'm sure that's why we're still together and I still like him. So
yes, 27 years. It's so amazing.
It is. And love is easy. It's easy to love somebody, especially somebody who has raised children with you and provided in so many ways. But liking somebody is a much harder thing. And so making sure that's a priority is to build like into your relationship with your partner. That's critical.
Yes, I agree. We do a date night every month, regardless of, I know some people are like, month. I'm like, but life happens and we both travel.
Right.
But that has been a non-negotiable for the past 3 years. My son is 5, and it is just just dedicating the time to just us is so important. It is so important. And I felt such a sense of like community with him in raising our son, but there's also times when he frustrates me and I'm angry and I'm like, I love you, but I don't like you right now. So that is so, so important. And I love that you're a picture of that for your boys and for your family to come. So that's so, 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 so important.
It is. It is. Erin, this has been such a treat and unexpected because we hadn't met directly. Somebody had sent me your information and said, I think she'd make a great guest for your podcast. And I'm so glad that you scheduled and that we had this time together. Thank you.
Thank you. I loved this. This was fun. This was kind of like therapy. I'm not going to lie, Sarah. I feel like I'm just going to have to lay down after this.
Yeah. Well, we should have had a coffee or something in our hands. That's what it felt like. It felt like we were sitting at my table having coffee breakfast together.
I loved it. Yes, yeah, so good.
Me too.
Thank you.
Thank you. Listeners, it's your turn now. What can you do in the words that you use, how can you shift to a yes and with your team, with your children, with your partner, with your friends? How can you support the people around you and make sure that you are living in alignment with how you want to show up in the world? I'd encourage you to check out the book. Tell me the name of the book again.
It's called I See You, and it's a leader's guide. This is a subtitle, A Leader's Guide to Energizing Your Team Through Radical Empathy, but just I See You, Erin Diehl, you'll find it.
I See You with Erin Diehl. And the links will be in the show notes associated with this podcast episode at elkinsconsulting.com. And remember, you are leading from wherever you sit. So this book is also for you. Thanks so much for listening to Your Stories Don't Define You, How You Tell Them Will. Namaste.
You must keep on trying. Smile, what's the use of crying? You'll find that life is still worthwhile if you just smile.